The crystal chandeliers of the Montgomery estate cast ethereal shadows across marble floors as cruel laughter echoed through the grand ballroom. At the top of the sweeping staircase stood Sophia Williams, draped in a midnight blue gown that shimmered. With every calculated step, she took down into the lion's den. The laughter wasn't born of admiration. It was pure, vicious mockery. "Well, well," Marcus Montgomery whispered to his circle of elite friends, raising his crystal flute of crystal champagne. "Look who actually had the audacity to show up. Our beloved housekeeper has graced us with her presence." Sophia was 37 years old, and in all her years of cleaning every pristine corner of this mansion, she had never imagined she would descend these stairs as a guest, even if it was all an elaborate, cruel joke. For 3 years, she had been invisible in their world, a silent spectre moving through their lives, polishing their silver while they spun their webs of fake pleasantries and genuine malice.
She had watched them treat each other with rehearsed affection while treating her like an inconvenient piece of furniture. The invitation had arrived 4 days earlier, delivered with a smirk she knew too well. "Charity gala this Saturday, Marcus,"
had said, extending the gold-embossed envelope with theatrical flourish. "Dress code, black tie elegance. I'm sure you have something appropriate hanging in your closet, don't you, Sophia?" The echo of his friend's laughter had followed her down the servants' corridor like hungry wolves. It was an obvious trap, a public humiliation designed to put her firmly back in her place before Los Angeles's most influential elite. Marcus had even ensured that society photographers would be present to document what he privately called an educational evening. "I'll bet you 50,000 she doesn't show," Marcus had told his wife Caroline the previous evening while Sophia dusted nearby. "And if she does, she'll provide the entertainment of the century." Caroline's laugh had been as sharp as broken glass. "Oh, Marcus, you're terrible. The poor thing will probably arrive in something borrowed from Goodwill and slink out within 10 minutes. But Marcus Montgomery had made 2 critical miscalculations about Sophia Williams. First, she had grown up in ballrooms far grander than this one, long before circumstances forced her to clean them for survival. Second, some storms don't break you, they teach you to become the hurricane. As Sophia glided across the polished floor under their mocking gazes, her posture remained regal, her expression serene, like someone carrying secrets that could reshape their entire world. Her steps were measured, deliberate, as if each movement were part of a carefully choreographed performance, years in the making. "Dear God, she actually came," whispered Margaret Ashford, a senator's wife, clutching her pearl necklace. "And that dress? Where on earth did she get it?" "Probably rented it and will be paying it off for months," sneered Vivian Cross, oil heiress and part-time social destroyer. How pathetically desperate. What none of these predators knew was that Sophia hadn't bought, borrowed, or rented this gown. She had simply reclaimed it from a past that Marcus would have moved mountains to erase, had he known it existed. Marcus approached her like a lion stalking wounded prey, his billionaire friends forming a circle around him. His confidence was intoxicating. After all, he had orchestrated this as a masterclass in social dominance and public degradation. "Sophia, what a delightful surprise," he purred, his voice dripping with false warmth. "I must admit, I never doubted. You'd accept our invitation. After all, when someone of your background receives an opportunity like this." "Someone of my background," Sophia repeated, her voice cutting through the air like silk over steel. "Please, Marcus, finish your thought. I'm fascinated to hear your perspective." For just a moment, something in her tone made Marcus hesitate. There was an authority there that didn't match the submissive woman he knew from the mansion's corridors. But arrogance quickly flooded back. "Well, you understand. Someone who doesn't typically move in these circles. You must be feeling rather overwhelmed by all this." He gestured grandly at the opulent surroundings. "Sophistication." Sophia's smile was dangerous in its serenity, causing several nearby guests to stop their conversations instinctively. "Overwhelmed," she repeated softly, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made Marcus unconsciously step backward. No. Marcus, I'm feeling exactly where I've always belonged. The silence that followed lasted mere seconds, but it was enough to shift the entire atmosphere. There was something about Sophia's presence, the way she spoke, moved, commanded space, that defied every assumption these people had made about who she should be. Marcus cleared his throat, struggling to regain control. Well, I hope you enjoy yourself tonight. I'm certain it will be educational. Oh, I'm absolutely certain it will be educational for everyone, Sophia replied, her gaze slowly scanning the assembled elite as if memorizing each face for future reference. What these privileged parasites didn't realize was that Sophia carried with her a secret so explosive it would transform this evening of planned humiliation into the most devastating lesson on prejudice and underestimation that Beverly Hills society had ever witnessed. Marcus was enjoying himself more than he had anticipated. Sophia hadn't fled in embarrassment as expected. Instead, she stood there with that strangely confident bearing that was beginning to unsettle him in ways he couldn't explain. "Everyone," Marcus announced loudly, tapping his platinum cufflink against his crystal glass to command attention. "I'd like to formally introduce our very special guest this evening, Sophia, our incredibly dedicated housekeeper." Laughter rippled through the ballroom like a malicious tide. Phone cameras began, flashing as socialites captured images for their social media accounts, already composing cruel captions in their minds. "Marcus," Caroline murmured beside him, feigning concern while her eyes sparkled with malice. "Don't you think this might be a touch harsh?" "Harsh?" Marcus laughed heartily. "I'm providing her with the opportunity of several lifetimes. When else would someone like her ever experience an event of this caliber?" Sophia stood motionless in the center of the room, every eye fixated on her. But instead of the humiliation they expected to witness, there was something deeply unsettling about her composure, a tranquility that seemed to emanate from someone who had weathered far more devastating storms. Margaret Ashford approached with her venomous entourage, all wearing matching expressions of poisonous sweetness. "Sophia, darling, you simply must tell us, how long did it take you to select that gorgeous gown? It must have been such a challenge finding something so suitable." "Actually," Sophia replied with a calmness that made Margaret falter, "this dress holds very particular significance. It belonged to my mother." "Your mother?" Vivian Cross laughed nastily. "And where exactly did your mother acquire such an exquisite piece? Some high-end consignment boutique?" Sophia's smile contained something predatory now. "My mother wore this dress the final time she attended a ballroom like this. That was 22 years ago, when she was still Sophia Williams Montgomery." The silence that followed was deafening. Conversations died mid-sentence as people began to realize something monumentally important was being revealed. Marcus, who had been laughing with his inner circle, turned slowly. His face had begun to drain of color. "What did you say?" "Williams? Montgomery," Sophia repeated, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. "It's fascinating how some people choose to conveniently forget their own family history, isn't it?" Marcus's face was now visibly pale. Caroline instinctively gripped her husband's arm, sensing something terrible was unfolding. "You're delusional," Marcus said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "I don't know what sick game you're playing, but this isn't a game, Marcus." Sophia took a deliberate step toward him, and several guests instinctively backed away. "This is history. Our history. The history you tried to bury when you decided it was more convenient to pretend certain family members never existed." The phone cameras continued recording, but now for entirely different reasons. Whispers began spreading through the room like wildfire. Caroline pulled Marcus by the sleeve. "What is she talking about? Marcus, what is she saying?" "She's lying," Marcus replied, but his hands were trembling slightly. "She's a mentally unstable employee seeking attention." Sophia reached into her small evening purse and withdrew an object that made several guests gasp audibly. It was a ring. Not just any ring, but the historic Montgomery family signet ring, crafted with the distinctive emerald and family crest that had been passed down for 4 generations. This ring, Sophia said, holding it up for all to see, was given to my mother by her father-in-law, William Montgomery. My grandfather, the man you told your children died without leaving an heir. Marcus was now visibly shaking. Where did you get that? How dare you steal from— Steal? Sophia's laugh contained no warmth. Marcus, one cannot steal something that belongs to them by birthright. Margaret Ashford, who had been watching with her mouth agape, whispered to her companion, Dear God, do you think she's telling the truth? Impossible, Vivian murmured, but her voice had lost its earlier certainty. Marcus would have mentioned having a cousin. Sophia heard the whisper and turned to them. Cousin? She said, pausing dramatically. Oh no, ladies, I'm not Marcus's cousin. She looked directly at Marcus. I'm his half-sister. The ballroom exploded in gasps and muffled exclamations. Marcus looked as though he had been physically struck. This is insane, he shouted, his voice cracking. My father would never— You're fabricating this entire story. William Montgomery had an affair with my mother, Isabella Williams, for 6 years. Sophia continued relentlessly. She was the family's private music instructor. When she discovered she was pregnant with me, your father promised to provide for us, and he honored that promise until the day he died. Caroline now had both hands pressed to her mouth, staring between Sophia and Marcus, as if watching a car crash in slow motion. You, Sophia said, pointing directly at Marcus, decided it would be simpler to pretend we never existed. You terminated our support, sold the house your father purchased for my mother, and left us in absolute destitution. I had no legal obligation to— Marcus began. You had no obligation to care for your father's family, Sophia interrupted. How interesting, considering you inherited 100% of a fortune that should have been divided between us. The weight of Sophia's words was slowly sinking into the minds of the assembled guests. Several began distancing themselves from Marcus as if proximity might contaminate them with scandal. Prove it, Marcus said desperately. Anyone can fabricate a story and produce some jewelry. Sophia smiled again, and this time there was something genuinely predatory in her expression. Oh, Marcus, do you really believe I would come here without proof? She gestured toward the ballroom entrance. They can enter now. 3 people walked into the ballroom at that moment who would forever alter the lives of everyone present. The first was Diana Ross, Los Angeles' most respected investigative journalist. The second was Thomas Chen, an attorney specializing in inheritance and estate law. The third made Marcus Montgomery stagger as if he had been punched in the chest. Dr. Peterson, Caroline gasped, recognizing the family's longtime private physician. What are you doing here? Dr. Peterson, who had treated William Montgomery during his final years, walked to the center of the room. His hands were trembling, but his voice was steady. 22 years ago, I was coerced into signing a falsified death certificate. William Montgomery did not die of natural causes. He was systematically poisoned with arsenic over a period of several months. The hall erupted in shocked cries. Diana Ross raised her hand for silence. Please keep your recording devices active. This is an official confession being documented for legal purposes. Marcus was now visibly desperate, sweat beading on his forehead. You're insane, Peterson. My father died of cardiac complications. Your father discovered the embezzlement you had been conducting from the family company for years, Dr. Peterson continued relentlessly. He had modified his will to include Sophia and was prepared to report you to authorities when he began exhibiting suspicious symptoms. Sophia remained silent, tears of vindication finally flowing down her cheeks. After 22 years, someone, was finally telling the truth. Thomas Chen opened his briefcase and produced an official document. This tissue sample was analyzed last month by an independent laboratory. The arsenic levels were lethal. "You're all conspiring against me," Marcus screamed, his voice completely uncontrolled. "This is an elaborate setup to destroy me." Diana Ross stepped forward. "Mr. Montgomery, I have recordings of 6 separate conversations you had with Dr. Peterson between 2001 and 2003, where you threatened to destroy his medical career." Sophia finally spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Marcus, you didn't just murder our father. You stole 22 years of my life." "I didn't kill anyone," Marcus pointed frantically in all directions. "You're all lying." "Then explain this," Sophia said, connecting her phone to the mansion's sound system. A recording began to play. Marcus's voice was unmistakable. "Peterson, you're going to keep quiet about anything unusual you found in the old man's blood work. If you speak, I guarantee you'll never practice medicine again. And as for that woman and her bastard daughter, they're on their own now." The silence that followed was absolute. Even Marcus's most loyal supporters now looked at him with disgust and horror. Helena stared at her husband in complete revulsion. "Marcus, you actually did this?" 22 years, Sophia screamed, her composure finally breaking. 22 years of cleaning my own father's house for the man who murdered him. Sophia took a deep breath and regained her deadly calm. "Do you want to know how I obtained all this evidence? I didn't come to work here by accident. I applied specifically for this position. I spent 3 years preparing, gaining access, collecting proof of everything you've done." Marcus made one final, desperate attempt. "Even if any of that were true, it doesn't matter now. The estate was settled decades ago." Thomas Chen smiled for the first time that evening. "Actually, Mr. Montgomery, when there is evidence of murder, all assets can be redistributed according to the original will, and we have a copy of William Montgomery's authentic final will." Sophia approached Marcus, who was now pressed against the wall like a cornered animal. "Do you know what my greatest mistake was, Marcus? Believing you might change on your own." "Please," Marcus whispered. All arrogance finally evaporated. "Caroline, the children, this will destroy our entire family." "You destroyed our family. The moment you chose money over justice." Marcus collapsed into a nearby chair, completely defeated. His transformation from arrogant millionaire to exposed murderer had taken less than 3 hours. The sound of sirens began echoing from outside. The police had arrived. As officers entered to arrest Marcus, Sophia walked onto the mansion's balcony. Below, dozens of reporters waited with cameras and microphones. The story had already gone viral. Caroline approached her on the balcony. "Sophia, I truly didn't know anything about this. I swear." "I know," Sophia said gently. "You were also his victim, Caroline. What happens now?" Sophia looked out at the city sparkling below them. "Now, Caroline, justice will finally be served. And perhaps Los Angeles will learn that true class has nothing to do with your bank account balance." As Marcus was led away in handcuffs through the same ballroom where he had attempted to humiliate her hours earlier, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced in 22 years: genuine peace. Sophia Williams Montgomery sat in what had once been Marcus's executive office, now completely transformed. The walls that had once displayed trophies of greed now showcased certificates from community programs and photographs of employees who had been promoted from entry-level positions to management roles. Marcus had been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The charges included first-degree murder, corporate fraud, extortion, and tax evasion. His entire personal fortune had been seized to compensate his numerous victims. "Miss Montgomery," said Jessica, her new executive assistant, who had previously worked in the building's maintenance department. "The New York Times is here for your interview about the company's transformation." Sophia smiled. In 6 months, she had increased company profits by 60% simply by treating employees as human beings. Fair compensation, Merit-based promotions and a respectful work environment had created productivity levels Marcus had never achieved. Through fear and intimidation, Caroline had divorced immediately and relocated with her children. Before leaving, she had sought out Sophia for a personal apology. "You could have destroyed us completely, but you chose to protect my children. I will never forget that kindness. Children shouldn't pay for their parents' crimes," Sophia had replied. "They deserve the opportunity to become better people than he was." Dr. Peterson now served as the company's chief medical officer, providing free health care to all employees. "I never thought I'd find the courage to do what was right," he had told Sophia during a recent meeting. "You taught me it's never too late to reclaim our integrity." Margaret Ashford and Vivian Cross had attempted to reconcile with Sophia in the weeks following the scandal, but she maintained polite distance. "You mocked me when you perceived me as inferior. Now you seek my friendship because you've learned about my net worth. That reveals everything about your character." Sophia's story had become an international phenomenon. She received invitations to speak at universities about leadership and social justice, but she preferred focusing on tangible work. "I don't want to be famous for suffering," she explained in a rare television interview. "I want to be remembered for what I built afterward." The company now sponsored educational scholarships for employees' children, operated a microcredit program for underserved entrepreneurs, and had established California's largest domestic violence support fund. On a quiet afternoon, Sophia received a letter from prison. It was from Marcus. "Sophia, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to understand that you showed me the monster I had become. I spend every moment trying to comprehend how I transformed into someone capable of murdering his own father. For money. My children asked about you during their last visit. They want to meet the aunt who protected our family when their father failed." Sophia kept the letter without responding. Forgiveness was a personal journey, but justice had already been served. During her interview with the New York Times, the journalist asked, "Some critics say your revenge was excessive. How do you respond?" "Revenge would have been doing to him exactly what he did to me," Sophia replied calmly. "Justice is ensuring. He pays for his crimes and preventing others from suffering as I did. There's a fundamental difference. What advice would you give to people facing similar injustices?" Sophia looked out her office window, watching employees enjoying lunch in the company garden that now offered them dignity and respect. The greatest victory isn't destroying those who wronged you. It's building something so magnificent that their injustice becomes merely the opening chapter of your triumph story. That evening, Sophia returned home, not to the cramped apartment where she had nurtured dreams of justice, but to a warm house where she had adopted 3 children who, like her, needed second chances at life. As she helped the children with their homework, she thought of the father she had barely known, but whose legacy flowed through her veins. William Montgomery would be proud to see his daughter not only reclaim what was stolen, but transform a company built on exploitation into a beacon of opportunity and dignity. Sophia's true victory wasn't dethroning Marcus. It was proving that when you build power on justice rather than fear, that power multiplies and elevates everyone around you. Marcus had tried to humiliate a housekeeper and discovered he had underestimated an heiress. More importantly, he learned that dignity cannot be purchased, inherited, or stolen. It is earned through the choices we make when nobody is watching. The most dangerous person in any room is often the one everyone has chosen to ignore. And sometimes, justice wears an evening gown and walks down a staircase with the grace of someone who has always belonged there, someone who was simply coming home.